What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Whiskey Morgue Podcast, where we talk about the whiskey we're drinking, the horror we're watching, and everything else in between. My name's Mike, and today, on our first ever episode, we have my friend Dylan here from Shanky's joining us. So, Dylan, welcome. Thank you for being my guinea pig in this whole experiment.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Love the platform. Love everything you're doing. I'm glad we get to share our Shankies tonight.
Yeah, I'm ready to dive into this, and when I went online right away, so we connected. We've been kind of following each other for a while. I had no clue you were attached to Shanky's. Finally, when you reached out and we started talking, I wasn't really familiar. Started digging around, and I got a lot of like lore behind behind the brand and the character. But can you give us kind of like I guess like the true origin story of like how the brand got started, and then maybe a bit about like how you got involved in your role with the brand?
For sure. Yeah. Again, to start off, thank you so much for having me and Shankies. And I hope you don't mind. I brought a guest
No,
tonight.
that's awesome.
So it's more of, yeah, we've got two guys over here telling you the story of Shankies.
It's
And
okay. My It's Live bust over there has the Shanky's bandana. So
it's perfect. Yeah. Everyone is well dressed. I think we also need to acknowledge that we're both
yes.
rocking the tees. You should have your specialty Halloween one coming very soon. So you'll have
Yeah.
the black and orange
And I don't know if you have anything to do with the tees, but like good quality. Now that I've been doing my own merch stuff and I'm super picky about black t-shirts, awesome quality. It's actually a really nice shirt.
I actually appreciate you saying that so much because every piece of point of sale, swag, merchandise that we make, I put on, I try, we check out everything. Like it has to be something someone would wear, is what I
Yeah.
think about when it comes to any branded merch. So,
And
as a
when you
black
get
t-shirt aficionado as you are, I
yes.
appreciate the compliment.
And it's interesting because you get a few different brand shirts. Like I've been fortunate over the 4 years of doing this, you get a bunch of different brand shirts, and there's some you'll take out and like this is cardboard and like thank you, but you're probably not gonna wear it comfortably. Where like this already was like my wife already stole this once for a bedtime shirt, and that says something because if it's soft enough and quality, then it
Absolutely.
might even make a bedtime shirt.
Well, you let me know. We can send you more. We can send you a full
All
supply.
right.
So I'm glad you dig it. Glad it's part of the black
Sweet.
t-shirt repertoire from now on.
For sure, it's made
Um,
its way in.
But yeah, you called it out. I'm glad we're able to have this conversation now because we've just, I think, been a fan of what each other have been doing even before we
Mhm.
started talking about Shankies. Love what you do with the crossover of horror and whiskey as a whole. I mean, it's awesome for anyone to be interested in one thing, but then to find a crossover of two things is just super badass. So hats off to you for that.
Yeah, and I thought I'd be my own little corner of the internet. Like I figured that there's people who love whiskey, there's people who love horror, and it's been super cool to see everything come together. And then even connect with brands who directly relate to that, such as you guys.
So yeah, perfect platform. Love the crossover. Happy to be talking about Shankies tonight. And yeah, you called it out. There's among the many things the Irish are good at. One is whiskey making, and one is storytelling.
Mm.
So Shanky's Whip is a brand that we developed a few years ago now. We've been in trade for 3 years. And it all originated, the name at least, from an old piece of Irish folklore. There was a guy who used to race horses and he used to make whiskey, drink whiskey, and have some very, well, let's call it overzealous celebrations when he would win his races.
All
So
right.
he was banned from the track and he was banned from racing horses. So in true Irish fashion, he found a loophole and he, you know much the Irish, much leprechauns love their loopholes, and came back racing an ostrich. And he said, "Well, you said I couldn't race a horse, and this is an ostrich." So it was a fun piece of Irish folklore. We wanted to create a really fun Irish whiskey brand. There's a million brands out there. A lot of them are very, very good. But we wanted to do something exciting, whimsical, silly, fun, and enjoyable. And we'll get into the liquid in a little bit, but that's kind of like the origin story about the name and the brand.
Nice. And were you involved right away, or is this something you kind of came into? Like, what's your involvement, I guess, even right now in like terms of your role? Because it seems like you kind of wear a bunch of different hats at the moment.
For sure. Yeah, I've been in the whiskey business for about 12 years now. And the entire time, more or less, working with the same gentleman who created this brand. So we're a very
Nice.
small DIY shop. It's only about five or six of us. And the two founders, Elwin Gladstone, Mark Teasdale, have a very long resume of successful brands that they've created themselves and launched. Sailor Jerry and the Kraken were the two brands that they created,
Oh,
unbeknownst to me
wow.
at the time,
Yeah.
that I used to drink all the time in my younger legal drinking years, of course.
Yeah.
Would love those brands. I was always drawn to the iconography of those two. And once I entered the workforce and was working in booze, I found out those were the guys who created it. teamed up with them, worked for them for a long time. And then when they started this new company about 3, 4 years ago, jumped on board to help them move Shankies.
That's awesome. And I can definitely see the tie now, mentioning like Sailor Jerry. I too have had my fair share. I think I started off with the captain. You start off
Yep.
with Captain Morgan, you graduate, you go a little bit higher up in proof. And yeah, I originally was a rum guy. So those, I got a lot of callbacks there to, to some
Same here.
earlier days.
Yeah, you and I have a lot of things in common, I think. Rum
Yeah.
now being another one. That's the proper evolution. Captain, or maybe even before that, like Admiral Nelson,
Yeah.
Captain, Sailor Jerry, and then you graduate to the Kraken, ultra high proof.
Oh, yeah. Um, so I feel like you guys have like blitzed the market, like in terms of like even most times when people send me a sample, like I'm in Canada, right? So I've had to figure out my loopholes, and having family in the US, I was able to get the package that you sent over. But then I realized it's in the LCBO. And this is an interesting like caveat because if you're familiar, and I'm sure you are by now, in like the LCBO, tons of brands come up here and you can get into Alberta fairly easily, but the LCBO just makes you jump through so many hoops and they have to approve and they can just like not like font on your bottle and they'll be like, yeah, no, we're not taking you. And then they want to be certain that they can move pallets. So what was nice is right away, when I looked it up, I was like, oh, I can go to the store and buy another bottle, which I have since because, as we'll get into with some of the
Thank you. I
parties, the
appreciate
first
it.
bottle you sent, which I appreciate, like did not last long. But yeah, so in terms of like the marketing behind it, like it seems quite calculated and ingenious in many ways. You have some of those short videos posted online. What was the vision behind this? Was it like because it's super fun, right? So I feel like even, I don't know the others behind the brand, but I've gotten to know you and watch you online and stuff. So I feel like you kind of embody this Shanky's, like it's fun, it's exciting, it's versatile. Was that part of the vision when you guys were putting the brand together?
Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. We wanted something that was really fun and approachable. I've worked on super serious whiskey brands before with hundreds of years of heritage and master distillers and distilleries and that whole experience, which is great. But this brand offers something a little bit different. And when it came to the liquid that we wanted to put forth, we wanted to combine a few of people's favorite things, namely people's favorite things from Ireland. So,
Mm,
liquid is black, like a stout beer. So, like a Guinness. People love Guinness all around the world. Stout beer is delicious. Shanky's actually pairs well with stout. It is smooth, like a cream or like an Irish cream. So, if you were to think like a Bailey's, but without that viscous,
mm.
milky, dairy type of mouthfeel, and it's Irish like whiskey. So if you think of like a Jameson or a Tullamore Dew or something like that. So black, smooth, and Irish. It's basically a Guinness, an Irish cream, and an Irish whiskey all wrapped up into one delicious 33% alcohol by volume product. So very sessionable, really good as a chilled shot, super versatile in any type of drink that you can make at home, really nice at the bar. And because of that, we achieved a very wide appeal very early on.
Yeah, and that was the first thing that kind of resonated with me. And I guess you tied it up really nicely. I never thought of it as like part Guinness, part like Irish cream and whiskey, because drinking it myself, like I'll even flat out say, I've gone deep into the whiskey thing, and I'm not a snob because I've started with like red solo cups, and as we mentioned, like some dirty nights with like cheap liquor, and so I'm definitely not highbrow to flavored whiskeys or anything, but like I don't drink as many anymore, right? Um, Kind of learning about the brand and connecting with you, I was like, okay, I'm obviously super open and curious. So I pulled it out, I tried it myself first, and I was like, damn, this is really, really good, right? And I'm like, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Because like even like the creamy element, um, I was like, it reminds me of Bailey's, but it's not Bailey's. Because usually like I don't mind the taste. I enjoy a Bailey's taste, but like not huge on like the like heavy cream, for instance. Like once in a while I'll do it. So I was like, oh, I'm getting that creamy texture, but it's like, yeah, dark like a stout. And the whiskey does stand up at the front, which I do like. So it doesn't feel like you're tasting some obscure drink with just like vanilla kind of layered over everything. Like there is whiskey, and then I feel like everything else kind of like the texture, the pops of like the vanilla, like caramel, add on and complement the whiskey first, which to me is like a standout. And then yeah, taking that out, there was like a real first test where I brought that out at there was like a family gathering, and I said, hey, like there's this product, and that's the best test for me is like look, I think that when I did my post originally, I joked that I'm like, oh, no one wanted to drink BTAC with me in the in the corner. But there's like, as much as I was joking, there's some truth to it where I have this huge whiskey collection. I think everyone's gonna come by and be like, oh, I've always wanted to try William LaRue Weller, like Mike, pour me some. And usually they're not. They're like, do you have rum? Do you have something like drinkable? And when I brought this one out, it was interesting to see people taste it and like eyes lit up. And one person was like, oh, I'm just throwing this with Coke. Like this is just like a vanilla Coke and I'm going to mix it in there. I told you my father-in-law was like, oh, throw something in my coffee. And I'm like, okay, we're like, at this point, I hadn't really looked at the recipes or anything. I'm like, we're going to throw some in the coffee. And he's like, oh, this is even better than Bailey's. This is amazing. And then he was with us at the time. So he was like, make me one of those special coffees.
Special coffee. I love that. Yeah, that's got
I
to
think,
be one of our cocktails for sure.
yeah, just special
The
coffee.
special coffee.
And he had a few of those. I think he was one of the primary people responsible for making a dent in the initial bottle that you sent. But yeah, for me, I was like, this happened with people who aren't bartenders, like at home hanging out. And then again, I brought it out at a party. Same thing, just kind of let people run wild. At this point, I had some fun, so I made some suggestions of what you could do with it. And I was like, this resonates so much with people because it's familiar, like all these core flavors, I think. But I can only imagine how it was received by like the bartenders and like the cocktail scene. So can you speak to like maybe like when you first started launching this, like I'm sure you're out to market, your bartenders are probably I would say the most important. How did that go over with them in terms of accepting the product?
Yeah, you used the perfect word. You said familiar. And
Mm.
that is something that we will hear time and time again when we do our events, when we go and sell. I'm always out there selling, whether I'm, working or not, so to speak. And whenever you taste somebody on it, they go, "Oh, that's got like some nostalgic flavor to it. What is that? Is that oh, it tastes like a Werther's. My grandma used to give me Werther's." Or, "Oh, you know what? This almost tastes like this would go great in Coke. This would go great in root beer. I want to put this in vanilla ice cream and make like an ice cream float." And it's a flavor that is very approachable because vanilla, caramel, cream are all things that, like you said, they're familiar, they're nostalgic, they're very approachable, and they're super versatile. So you can mix them with just about anything. And we really created it as something that would be a shot brand, something you can enjoy on its own. But there's no shortage of bartender creativity when we travel around. And the most surprising one to me was a bartender came up to me at an event and said, "I serve this with pineapple juice at my bar." And at first I was very hesitant in buying into pineapple juice with Shanky's, but he goes, "I'm
Yeah.
gonna go grab some pineapple juice. I'll be right back." And every bar has a can of that Dole, pineapple. And
Yeah.
he mixed it with that, shook it on some ice, and gave it to me. He's like, "You need to try that." And it quickly became one of my favorites because then it tasted like pineapple upside down cake. So we
Oh
started
wow.
calling that an Irish sunrise, like a tequila sunrise, but
Oh,
better.
nice.
And you mix it with a little bit of grenadine and a maraschino cherry, and it's like this delicious summer cocktail. And people don't usually associate whiskey, let alone Irish whiskey, with a summer drink. But
Mm.
beyond pineapple, if you mix it with orange juice, it tastes like an orange creamsicle. If you mix it with like a cinnamon liqueur, it tastes like French toast. If you mix it with any type of thing, there's some other outcome, like a magic trick. Like, you ever have jelly beans when you were a kid, and like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
two of them together to make movie theater popcorn with caramel or something?
Yeah.
I almost see Shanky's Whip like an adult version of that, which makes it really fun at parties, especially. And you named it. It's typically the first one to go at a party. Even if people don't know it's like it's mine and I brought it, I'll put it
Yeah.
down on the counter, see what happens, and it's the best market research you can have. There's no amount of money you can spend on market study groups that will beat a house party, in my humble opinion.
100%. And that's why I wanted to bring it up because it's over the time that's the first thing that I do now. It's kind of like, you know what, if you really want to see something, I don't even say too much. You just kind of table it, whether friends, family are over, and see what they think of it. And a lot of times you'll get the most honest opinion, right? So yeah, this one just really like clicked with everyone. And what's funny is I think at first it was familiar, but I used a lot of like safe cocktails. Like I did like almost like an espresso martini. Tonight, I have the Shanky's Whip we'll talk about in a second. But then hearing how it like can play with like orange juice, pineapple juice, hell, I'm like, damn, why haven't I put it on my ice cream yet? Like it's that versatile and it's so deceptive because you think it's dark, it kind of has that like buttery, creamy texture to it. how the hell is this going to mix with orange juice? But now all I know is like this week for market research and product research, I'll be mixing some more Shankies.
And yeah, put it on some ice cream, put it on some waffles, put it on tres leches. Like when we do events, especially if they're food and wine and there's other stands going on, we were once parked next to an ice cream truck and people were coming by and like poking a hole in their ice cream, being like, fill my ice cream up with Shankies, or they're bringing their desserts
That's awesome.
over. And it just goes so well with so many different things. We even do barbecue fests because a lot of barbecue teams were writing us saying that they're reducing it and using it as like a sticky sauce for their ribs.
Oh,
There's
wow.
really no end to the use for Shankies, which I haven't seen a product this versatile in my career thus far yet.
And I think it just kind of reinforces, like, obviously the marketing was intended to be fun and approachable, but the drink in itself is the fact that you can use it at the barbecue, put a hole in your ice cream and pour it in. I think that's super cool and kind of just like speaks volumes about what the brand represents, right? It's just that like fun. I think it's like and I don't want to think of like stuff like Jaeger because like again, I'll recall some harsh memories, but like it has that approach where I think like if I was drinking beer, I'd want to shoot back some Shankies. Like I'm just super casual night, like I'm drinking beer, I'm at a concert, I'll take a shot of Shankies. But then you can also like make it a lot more sophisticated and dress it up with all these different cocktails.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. At first, people see the black liquid and they go, ooh, I don't know if that's going to be for me. Or if they're not a whiskey drinker or they're new, they think that it's going to be something really intense. But it isn't precious. It isn't scary. It's not going to blow your head off. We welcome people to mix it with anything in the world. We've all had those whiskeys, whether it's like a Pappy or something where it's like, do not even put a drop of water in that.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is sacred nectar. Shanky's is really just something people are supposed to have fun with.
100%. So for tonight, I decided I would kind of mix what I've been drinking regularly and kind of lean into the whipper treats. The whipper treat was pumpkin coffee. And then it was like you guys, what was the original one? It was like um the topping
Yeah, really just any pumpkin coffee, or even if you just have a regular coffee and you want to add either some pumpkin cream or pumpkin
yeah,
spice.
sorry, it was whip. How did I have a brain fart? Like whipped cream. I was thinking of whipped cream. So like with whipped cream and like you guys do like cinnamon sugar on top, right?
Exactly.
So I'm like usually like black coffee, like black, like I like iced Americanos, just black, nothing in it.
Nice.
But I'm kind of basic when it comes to like fall season. I give in and I do like a pumpkin cold foam. So what I did with this one is I kind of did um I hope you like my glass here.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm
The
glad. I'm
pumpkin
glad
coffee.
we both came prepared
Yeah,
with
yes,
our
very,
treat.
very themed. I did the pumpkin coffee, but then I did a cold foam. Now, what I did learn is this. I'm proud that I made this cold foam. But by the time I bought the ingredients, I told my wife, I was like, I should just went to fucking Starbucks and bought a drink and poured it in because like it tastes good, but like obviously, crafting yourself takes a little bit of work. But I'm proud. So this is my whipper or treat. And then I put like the pumpkin spice kind of topping on top.
Looks
Yeah, and
beautiful.
just like really leaned into it. And yourself, do you have a whipper treat?
Yep, I did the same exact thing. As you know, this is our seasonal cocktail. I'm wearing the shirt right now, but I have one here for display purposes. That's the
Sweet.
back of the brand. You'll have this shirt soon. Whipper Treat is the seasonal holiday cocktail that we do. Spooky bars love Shankies. They were some of the early adopters. I'm sure you have some seasonal ones up by you, but some of my favorites are bars that are themed that way year round.
Yeah,
And
we have a
they,
couple.
they've adopted this, I think, just because it's so weird, it's so unusual, so whimsical. And the iconography and branding is a little like almost like American traditional tattoo. There's a lot that fits
Yeah.
into the space. And you also nailed it when you said it should have gone to Starbucks, because when a lot of people try Shankies, they go, oh, I want to put this in my Starbucks. This tastes like it would go great in a latte. And
Yeah.
I'm as basic as it gets when it comes to fall. I'm not above a PSL or 20. So I'm all for Shankies in a nice Starbucks. And then once it's in that cup, no one even knows that there's Shankies in there. So
Yeah, it's funny because at work, I think this might make its way into work. I shouldn't even say this as a teacher, but like people see me drink black coffee year round, and there's like
yeah.
I'm the easiest person to buy for because they're like, Mike, okay, yeah, we'll just get him a black coffee, or if I want to get special, it's like a iced black coffee. But every fall, people are like, yo, why is your drink a different color? Why it looks like there's some cream in there? And I have to go like at least pumpkin cold foam to kind of get in with the pumpkin spice topping just to lean into the fall flavors.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the Shanky's whipper treat, you have some pumpkin coffee, some whipped cream, some Shanky's whip in there, some pumpkin or cinnamon sugar on top.
Yeah.
Absolutely delicious. You can do a lightweight version of that, even if you just rim a shot glass with cinnamon sugar and
Mm.
put iced Shanky's in there and just like a splash of pumpkin coffee and you have it as a shot. Those mini cocktails, I'm starting to see a trend in. So whether it's just served as a shot or you have yourself a full whipper treat, it's a delicious fall serve.
I like that. I've never thought of that, the take on like the mini cocktail. Like, yeah, just adding a little bit of like cinnamon sugar to a little. I have the little skull shot glasses too. I'll do like the miniature version and
Perfect.
throw that together. Well, I'm gonna take a moment to take a drink of this because I've been thirsty and we've been chatting. So cheers. So thank you for jumping on here. I'm gonna take a nice
Yeah,
sip.
cheers to you.
I was worried I'm gonna get the frothy mustache here.
That's how you know it's good. That's how you know it's a proper foam top on that.
Oh yeah. So now that we have the spooky themed glasses out and we've gone over the introductions and the and the basics.
I hope you don't mind. I
Uh,
also brought a spooky neat serve. I just figured, it'd be appropriate to have it.
I almost wish I had I have the same I have the same glasses on me too. Let me do I have like I have a Glen here. I'll just throw some in a Glen. We'll do a shot together.
Perfect. I'm glad you also got the pour going so we can do.
Yeah, this alone, like, I mean, again, what I like is that there's this appeal of it. Again, it's fun, like you have like the pourer on it, but then I think there's like sometimes like little expectation. It's like, oh, what is this drink? And then you taste it and you're like, oh, it happens to also be really damn good. So it just kind of ticks all the boxes. Anyways, we'll do the shot and then I'll sip on my coffee. All right,
Cheers. So
cheers.
I think this glass is a little bit bigger than a shot, but
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks
I
pretty
I
big.
don't think that's a regulation measured serve, but it looks cool. So
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Is this right now it's all aesthetic? You're just gonna hop off here and be spinning a bit, but that's okay. I hope you don't have any plans after this anyway. So
no, we're in for the night. Yeah.
okay, good. So one of the main reasons we did connect on here is because we both are lovers of spooky season, like all year round. We celebrate Halloween. I know you're a big horror fan. Those Jason shots that you put out the other day for Friday the 13th were
Couldn't
stellar. Like,
resist. I just could not resist. Yeah.
yeah, they they were so good. So um when you sent it to me, I said, I have to do like the honor of pairing it. And people always ask like how do you come up with your pairings? And to be honest, it's like I don't know. It's always just it could be the tie to something historically, geographically, a feeling. And so I didn't know what I wanted to pair with this. I knew that like, October's coming up and I want to obviously lean into the season and movies that make me feel like the most Halloween. And usually like my answer to that is like Halloween 4, for instance, right? Like I just love the opening title and it's just like silence and the leaves blowing
Is
in the
that your
direction.
number one? Number one for you must be an impossible question, I realize, but
You know what? Like I think the original Halloween is like my number one for sure.
okay.
And just because like I know it's like I feel like the horror community, they're like, it's not deep cut enough. Like, and I'm like, no, but as a
Deeper.
child,
You need to go
yeah, you had to go
deep.
deeper. And yeah,
It shouldn't even be on any streaming platforms.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
climb a mountain and ask a monk for it on VHS.
That's exactly it. And
Yeah, I
I'm
know it.
like,
Yeah.
realistically, like, part of my childhood, I always talk about like me and my cousins, we came from like Portuguese, Italian, like immigrant families. And I don't know why there was always obscure VHS in the basement. So there was a few, like Halloween was there. So that was the first one I watched. And the quietness, the silence of like Michael, like that him walking across the street when like Jamie Lee Curtis or like Laurie Strode's running to the house
Yeah.
is just to me one of the scariest scenes ever because like dude's taking his time and he's just pacing over there and the mask is expressionless. So that just like was burnt into my mind as a
Yeah.
child. So I have this affinity for Halloween in the franchise and you bear with all the bad ones too. But yeah, and then there was like titles like People Under the Stairs, um, Deadly Friend, grandma's there's some deep cuts in there too for like the old Portuguese people, but like grandmother's house. And then the other big one was like coming from those backgrounds, like The Exorcist was like, look, like listen, Michael, like you can watch, Freddy Krueger at age 8,
Yeah.
but The Exorcist touches on Catholicism, so we can't do that in this house. Like, oh, thank you. Like, I could just watch like Freddy, who was originally like a child predator, you know, go into people's dreams and murder them. But The Exorcist, like, we're not gonna touch that. So those are some of the big pillars of like my start as a child in
That's
horror.
awesome. Well, yeah, you said you found obscure VHS in the basement. I think obscure VHS in the basement is a great horror movie name if you ever make one. That sounds like a deep cut right there.
I have to note this.
VHS in the
When I go
basement.
back and edit this, I'm gonna like jot that on, on the side. So for me, like when I was drinking this and then I had it at the party, kind of seeing everyone's take on it, I'm like, hey, to me, this is like a Halloween party drink. But everyone has their own variation of like what they want to do with it. Like I said, someone was just like dropping it in Coke, other person is shooting it. You have special coffee. And it made me think of Trick or Treat. So my pairing, the angle on that was just that the anthology of stories, but the importance of like coming together and celebrating the holiday and honoring tradition, which I think like in many ways Shanky's is new and fun, which like Trick or Treat is, but it's also very much like steeped in Irish lore and honoring tradition. So for yourself, maybe we could start with like you give us some of your, since you have to represent an Irish brand, some storytelling in terms of like the tie-in with some of the Irish lore, and then maybe we can go into like your definitive Halloween movie that you would pair this with.
Sure.
Now I'm gonna take a
Yes.
sip while you talk.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, oh, first of all, after I answer this question, I'd love to hear more about how you go about your pairings because it looks like that takes you a lot of time. And you've probably done it so long now that it takes a short amount of time, but it looks
Yeah.
very, very well thought out. And it seems like an impressive process. So
All
while we're
right.
here in a
Yeah.
shared space tonight, I would love to hear about that.
All right. Okay, cool. We'll
Uh,
definitely touch
and
on that.
and appreciate the selection you did for Shanky's. But for Irish whiskey and for Irish storytelling and Irish lore, so much of what we have here for Halloween does come from Ireland. So there's probably a horror movie about it somewhere that I maybe just haven't seen, probably ultra deep cut.
Yeah.
But we get even jack-o'-lanterns from Ireland.
Hmm.
So there's a piece of Irish folklore, which maybe we can, link the story in the bio, or whatever it's going to be, about Stingy Jack and this awful character named Stingy Jack. And the Irish people would carve gourds because gourds is really what they had more abundance of over there to help protect themselves from evil during the Halloween time, during harvest season.
Hmm.
Then immigrating here, pumpkins grew more robustly and they were more widely available. So they began carving pumpkins. And the name Jack O'Lantern comes from the original story of Stingy Jack.
Ah,
So
okay.
we have the Irish to thank for a lot of what we do here, especially jack-o'-lanterns, the, I guess, ultimate icon of the season. And getting over to Ireland for the Halloween season, I haven't gotten to do it just yet for October timing, but apparently they do
Mhm.
a lot of very badass types of ceremonies and parties and events.
That'd be awesome. I think that could be a business expense trip for sure.
I think that has to be an education trip. Yeah, we're gonna round up a bunch of bartenders and stuff and head over there for the full Stingy Jack experience. But it's a great piece of Irish folklore. And like I opened up with earlier on, the Irish are great at storytelling and sharing experiences and sharing that over Irish whiskey. So there's really so much to celebrate for us as an Irish whiskey brand during the Halloween season.
That's awesome. Like I knew bits of that. I knew like the pumpkin bit, but I didn't know the lore of like Stingy Jack. And I feel like for sure, like you said, there has to be some obscure like straight to VHS movie out there, but you
There
would think there'd
must
be
be.
more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably called Stingy Jack or something like that, and it's going to be deep cut somewhere. But maybe we can find it on like Tubi something later. Yeah.
Instead, we just got like Halloween 3 with a Irish company trying to
Yeah,
implant
exactly. Irish accents. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So in terms of pick, like we can go into after like some of your maybe like I so what I've learned is like asking these questions a lot of times when I ask like favorite horror movies, I've kind of swerved to like ones that left an impression on you most because like you said, it's very difficult to pick like a favorite, right? But maybe we'll start with like the first one that you would pair in terms of like you like to you for whatever reason is representative of Shanky's, and then maybe we can just chat a bit about some of those other movies that were influential when you were growing up.
Sure. I think if there's any horror movie or even specific horror movie scene that ties most closely to whiskey, enjoying whiskey, the spirits business as a whole. It has to be The Shining when Jack is sitting down at the bar, and I'll call it a monologue, but he's having a conversation with the bartender's Lloyd.
Yeah.
And the mania and psychosis that Nicholson's able to pull off in that moment has always been so captivating to me, especially since I feel like a lot of men at some point in their life have maybe sat at a bar and
Yes.
felt a piece of Jack in
Yeah.
that moment and in that space. And the way that he has that conversation and the way that he just says, I've got what, two 20s and two 10s.
Yeah.
You give me the bourbon, you keep him coming, you set him up, I'm going to knock him down. And
Yeah.
you know, as the viewer, he's in his own world. But in Jack's space, he's not. And
Yeah.
that, as far as the spirits business, I admire the back bar. I admire the classicness of the bartender, the classicness of the hotel. Uh,
Hmm.
you've interviewed Rob Dietrich before. The actual hotel, the Stanley, is out in Colorado. Like it's a real place. It's not just a set. So
So
that
what I've
place is
learned,
really magical to me.
what I've learned is they do like I didn't know this part that they have their own like whiskey bar there where they do like their own picks. So you can go in there and they did fittingly like a Jack Daniels pick recently. And then on the side it had it carved in it like all work, no play makes Jack a dull boy.
So
Just
sick.
written
Yeah.
like and I was like, I actually think I put out a message at one point and I'm like, I don't ask for anything from anyone online. And I'm just like, I will pay you extra money. Like if you are in Colorado or you can get to the Stanley and pick me up. I mean, I would take any Stanley pick, but I think I wasn't successful, by the way. But I think it makes more of a reason to go there one day. Like it's definitely. I mean, to go to the Shining Hotel is one thing that would be awesome, but then to go there and they actually have a whiskey bar with their own picks and tasting room. I'm like, that's awesome.
It's super cool. I think you have to have it on like your horror destination list. We'll have to talk to Rob. Maybe the three of us can get together out there at some point.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
And that whole movie is based in something not too distant from something that could happen. If anyone's ever been snowed in, you're up in Canada, you get a lot
Yeah.
more snow than we do. At least we used to get a lot of snow, not so much anymore. But the feeling of being completely engulfed in a potential endless solitude. I know it's a very
Yeah.
literal solitude in the movie, but then how it converts to the mental solitude and psychosis is just an incredible comparison. And then you sprinkle a little whiskey in there, and
I talk about like, when people hear me talk about living here, I mean, Toronto's not too bad. I think Toronto's like very similar to New York, but like there's times where it's laid on thick where, you can't open your door and again, it's changed a bit. But for me, I always talk about like the seasonal depression being like a real thing because I do go stir crazy. Like I don't do well cooped up inside and it's dark all the time. So it's funny because I feel like I've had a lot of discussion about The Shining and everyone has their tidbit on it and what they enjoyed. But um, funny enough, I at least myself, like I've never really heard anyone talk about like that little inkling of like Jack being in all of us, and especially if you've endured a really cold, harsh winter and yeah, you're like cooped up inside.
yeah, a literal winter, a metaphorical winter. I think
Yeah,
acknowledging seasonal depression is really important for everyone to be able to talk about. It's really tough. I think during pandemic, everyone faced a 2-year version of their own Shining,
oh,
and
yes,
it really put people to the test. And luckily, people weren't throwing axes through bathroom doors all the time as a
yeah.
solution. But it's a real thing, and I think that movie so early on got ahead of it and captured it in a way where all of us have had that moment where there's a piece that kind of understands a little bit of where those crazy monologues come from.
And what's even worse was a friend of mine is an officer, police officer here, and him and I touched base during COVID and was like, how's everything? How you been, man? And he actually mentioned that domestic violence rates skyrocketed during COVID. And so again, right, unfortunate, but the depth of like that script when you think about like The Shining again, like people want to look at it for what it is. It's a piece of art, and yeah, they're at the Overlook Hotel and all this, but there is so much truth to that. Like, you know what I mean? When you have to face your inner demons or whatever that might be, and like you said, with the metaphorical winter, what does it do to a person? And I think like yeah, COVID and the lockdown was definitely a testament to that, and like making people really face inwards or being cooped up or addressing rifts in relationships, all sorts. So yeah, it was a very interesting period we got to live through.
Totally. And I think that what that movie also shines light on, no pun intended on shine there, is that with all of the opulence and luxury and grandeur that they had access to, they're in this magnificent hotel. Still, he cracks, and still it is a nightmare. Which during COVID, a lot of us had a version of that. You had Netflix, you had DoorDash, you got to work
Yeah,
from home, you had like really, if you think about true struggle, we weren't physically being shipped off to war and having to face our deepest, darkest physical fears, including being ripped apart by a war zone. We were
absolutely.
on the comfort of our couches, and that was still as hard as it was for so many.
Yeah.
And the Shining showing them in that setting of really just having pure opulence all at their fingertips, and still there is rupture is, I think, a very cool thing to put through that lens and look at.
Damn, that's perfectly said. I think I'm just gonna have to do a few more podcast episodes.
Yeah, I
Just,
think yeah, we talk about seasonal depression, horror
yeah.
movies, domestic violence.
We'll tick all the boxes, right? We're
Yeah,
like, don't worry. At the end of the day, we're gonna come back to like how fun the drink is. Um, so in terms of like other movies that stand out for you, if you want to shoot off like some that you just remember as a child, maybe growing up or like as a teenager, one that kind of resonated with you most.
for sure. And I'll use that as an opportunity to make one more spirits business connection.
Yeah.
And people don't call it a horror movie. I think it's classically a horror movie, but we might be able to agree to Jaws being in the horror section of the
Oh
videos
yeah.
if those still existed. And the scene of Quint chugging his Narragansett beer and then crushing the can. And then
Yes.
it was a marketing campaign, the crush it like Quint thing. It's like
Yeah.
that is so badass. That movie always stood out to me as a surfer, growing up surfing in like the Northeast New England area, going
Hmm.
out to Martha's Vineyard as a kid, which is where they filmed a lot of that movie,
Yeah.
and always just being obsessed with the ocean. That movie was so cool to me, but that scene always stood out. Even before I could drink beer, I was a little kid, but I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
when you mean business, you chug a beer and you crush it, and there's like foam on your mouth and whatever, and that means you're getting down to it. And
Yeah.
that one moment always stood out to me as like such a badass, like horror change in pace, change in momentum, like let's get after it moment.
Yeah. And I think like the idea of like tapping into to very like real plausible fears, right? So like
Yeah.
like so being here, like funny enough, like one of my go every summer we'd go to Wildwood, New Jersey.
Nice. Yeah.
And I don't know how that even started, to be honest. I think like my parents were going. I mean, there was a big Italian community there and whatnot. And yeah, we would just go every summer. But I remember being like, oh, like you watch Jaws, and like I love swimming, I love the ocean, and I'm like, well, do I necessarily want to be in there? And one time there actually was a moment where some fins started popping up not too far away, and we were like, oh shit! Like I was like maybe a teenager, and my mom turns to me and she's like, "Oh my God, like there's we turned." My dad already sprinted out of the water and had seen them. Like, what a great father. I throw him under the bus for this one, but like he was running out of the water. Me and my mom are left, and it was dolphins, but
Yeah. You see
um
dolphins all the time, and people, will mistake that dorsal fin for it being a shark.
yeah.
But they do say if you see the dolphins, it usually means there aren't sharks. So that's good news.
Yeah, yeah. But I think like yeah, definitely Jaws. And I mean, on the drinking end, like there's the iconic beer, but he's drinking everything in that, man. Like we see them pour like moonshine and like apricot brandy and like wine, and the wine pours are just like this, and
And
they're
they're
like, yeah,
singing on the boat at night and
yeah.
the table and singing shanties. Like I love the energy that the spirit integration brings into that movie, and like the male camaraderie that they're experiencing. Almost, polar opposite of what we're talking about with The Shining, because it's like they have this hardcore team and they're like brothers in arms during this battle. And then just like the beer and the drinking part is just like super fun to me.
Yeah, that's so I worked at Blockbuster. I can say that I did have a good stint at
That's so
Blockbuster.
cool. Do
And
you have any of your original
I
swag, like employee?
no, and you know what? Like that's like one of my greatest regrets ever is I remember I did one of those purge your closet at some point
Yeah.
and got rid of it, like not knowing that, that'd be a really cool shirt to have later on, the blue golf shirt. Um, but that was fun in itself, like working there, and you get like 10 free rentals a week if it's like classics, if it was like the favorite section or whatever it was.
Right.
So yeah, just like that, like I already had a love for horror, but it just took off through the roof. Like I mean, obviously rented other things too, but having access like that while working there was awesome. And then you had those like real conversations too. Like you had like that one guy, you could tell like He rarely leaves the basement. And he's like, "Have you ever seen this one here?" And you're like, "Nah, I like that weird cover over there." He's like, "You gotta take that home and watch it." And you're like, "Okay." So
Like I'm
really,
14, man. I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, exactly that. That's awesome. Um, so before, because I was going to go into another thing, but pairings. You wanted to talk about
I
pairings,
would
so
love to
I'll
hear
come back
how
to
you
that.
go about your pairings. Because again, if I can make a little stage for you, is when people have an interest, it's very cool enough. I love taking interest in people's interests.
Yeah.
When people have two interests and find a way to make them work in concert to produce something like you have with Whiskey Morgue, I just think
Mhm.
it's the ultimate. So if you don't mind the interview being the interviewer for a second, how do you come up with that art? Because it's very cool.
Um, I think like I said, I feel like I mean it does involve a lot of research. I feel like I've questioned myself many times. Like when I started, I wanted to just do like I never thought I'd be doing anything like this with like podcasting, video format, the stuff I do with Rue Morgue, because I mean I teach for a living. I'm comfortable talking and presenting and all of that. But when I started Whiskey Morgue, I'm like, I just really want to focus on the writing. And I actually at first was like, I don't even want to show my face. Like I want to be this like mysterious person who just posts the bottle and the TV and just focus on the writing. Now, I've really tested the patience of the of the audience, but I think it's been cool that how many people actually still read because I'm like, it's ballsy, I guess, now putting a long ass caption like I do, and I keep telling myself like, oh, put it on your website because I do have a website, and I'm still considering it, but to me, I just like that. Like, I think I'm a true believer. Like, if you care and you want to read it, like, you're gonna just click that more button, and in that moment, you're kind of getting that experience. And I get all into like curating the music that I want to choose because sometimes I don't just choose like the theme song of like Halloween. I'll choose another song that I've been listening to and kind of like showcase my playlist. But the actual pairings, I usually try to like figure out like first, how does it make me feel? Like, is there an angle in terms of, does it like bring me back to a certain core memory or anything like that? And then I'll usually kind of look for the obscure facts, and I feel like I've done enough reading. Like, I'll pick up essays, all sorts that like I have a notepad on my phone of just facts. Like, so sometimes sometimes it'll be like whiskey first, or sometimes it'll be movie first. But I'm like, for instance, I was watching like one of the favorites, like The Exorcist, the other day. I've paired it a bunch of times. Um, and this time I was watching it, and I remember I read an interview with Jamie Lee Curtis where she was talking about how her mom got the call for her to play the role when she was a kid. And her mom was like, no, that hits too close to home. Like this idea of like an actress's daughter being possessed. And she's like, it's too dark or whatever, right? And then I thought about this idea of like, what if it was Jamie Lee Curtis? Right. So like all these like decisions, like would the Exorcist be the Exorcist, right? Because like Reagan and what's the actress's name there? Linda Blair, like she got tossed like a rag doll, like fucking back snapped, like
Didn't a
on
lot of bad things happen in like real life around that movie?
yeah. And like a lot of the methods on set were just insane. Like they were like shooting off guns to like get like genuine scares out of people. And I'm like, if Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, who is an established actress, is even near that, that's not happening. Like for sure, there's going to be changes. She has power and influence in Hollywood. So then it made me think of like the choice of barrels, and like I haven't put it together yet, but I was even thinking about like with like Rob, like our mutual friend there, where like you have this opportunity, like here's blackened whiskey, you have like your core product, but you're going to do like these special releases and or like finish it. And, you know, you finish it in one cask, maybe it's disastrous. And I know he kind of does his like all his lab testing, and he's very involved in that, but it's just like how different like the idea of like characters, setting, how the that can change the influence just as like your choice of like barrels or how you decide to age it and finish it and all that. So like I know I kind of just went into a pairing, but like that's where my brain goes. It's just like sometimes it's a feeling, an obscure fact. And sometimes, to be honest, I just get super fucking lucky. Like I remember I was doing um a Green Inferno, and I made a joke about Blantons and how like people become cannibalistic, like trying to get Blantons or whatever. And then the actress in it, I found out after because I was just looking into like the cast. Her name's Kirby Blanton. So
Oh,
sometimes,
perfect.
sometimes you just
Yeah.
get lucky with that stuff. But yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like I just think at the end of the day, the biggest thing for me is like, and I think what maybe the only pat on the back that I'll give is people notice like the attention to detail and like the effort. and I don't half-ass it, and it has gone faster. But I'm like, I even question myself sometimes. Like I'm sitting here writing and researching, and I'm like, dude, you're making a fucking Instagram post. Like calm down and like go do the dishes now or something.
I admire it. I'm the type of person who believes that everything matters. When it
Yeah,
comes to art, every little piece matters. And there are going to be the people who notice the song you chose has a lyrical sequence in it that ties into what you're saying. And you didn't
yeah.
just throw something on because, like you said, it's the Halloween theme. Like you went
Mhm.
through your Spotify, Apple, whatever you're using, you spent 20 minutes trying to find that thing so that it fit with the mini essay and the post and the
Yeah.
whiskey and made all the stars align.
And this is why you're the marketer, man. I need to get you.
Hey,
You can
you're the
write my
artist. I'm the one just
yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, and it's very cool.
That's awesome, and I appreciate that, man. And like I said, it was a big thing connecting with you, and already like I knew you were into horror, which is cool. But one thing I wanted to touch on, if you don't mind, is like kind of like with your like personal interests, is you've been on this like macabre moto journey lately. So if you want to maybe explain like what you've been up to, and then I need to know, have you experienced any supernatural or at least the weird shit on your journey? So maybe you can kind of walk people through what you've been doing.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very humbling, even to ask for the personal story because obviously it's about the brand, it's about Shanky's
Yeah.
Whip, but we have so many of shared personal interests, and the answer actually does have a decent segue because Shanky's Whip does incredibly well in like biker bars, and it
Hmm.
does really well in like those local dives. It does well at bike events. We do this huge event. We did the first one ever last year. We're going to do it again, even bigger this year, called Mama Tried in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's a huge custom motorcycle show, and we
Nice.
sample out Shankies there. Milwaukee, Wisconsin is obviously it's the home of Harley Davidson. That's where the factory is. That's where the museum is. That's where all that motorcycle culture is really birthed and goes out from.
Hmm.
And ironically enough, aside from my personal obsession for motorcycles, it's the number one market for Shankies in the US. So
Oh wow.
Shankies is in all 50 US states. Wisconsin is number one. We're in 85 countries worldwide, which we're super happy to be in right now. But whenever we look at the market mix, like Wisconsin is always just crushing it on Shankies. So it's lucky for me because, as
Mhm.
you've seen, motorcycles are a huge passion of mine. And similar to
Your whip of choice, no pun intended.
yes, exactly. My whip of choice. They are my whip. And similar to what you do by combining your two passions of horror and whiskey, I've started combining passions for like creepy destinations and riding my motorcycle to them.
Yeah.
So it kind of just came up one day where I was thinking of like, oh, it'd be funny if I came up with like a concept. I was calling it Radical Rides to Dark Destinations.
Yeah.
And it's like this, it would be like almost like an HGTV or History Channel show. And it's just, I'm
I'd
gonna ride
watch it.
a motorcycle and I'm gonna go to really weird places and I'll write posts about them. And staying in like creepy hotels or Airbnbs or whatever has always had a weird appeal to me, probably because I was so terrified about it as a kid.
Yeah.
And I was always so afraid of being in haunted houses. Is my room haunted? Did anyone die in this house? Dad, do you know if anything bad happened in this house? And now I'm like chasing that thrill as an adult. And I've found, and whenever you first started Whiskey Morgue, maybe you were initially surprised that like, oh wow, a lot of people like this crossover.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm a nobody when it comes to social media. It's just it's something that I enjoy doing. But even just seeing the community chatter amongst friends and maybe people I don't know, but that have now kind of tapped into it and are interested in the taking your motorcycle to these very, very weird places and shining a light on the ghost story of that place and checking into these hotels or Airbnbs or whatever it is. When you show up on a motorcycle to a place, it's different from showing up in a car. People always want to ask, "Oh, where did you come from? How far did you ride? How is it out there? Did you get rained on?" Like, it's
Yeah.
almost like traveling
Yeah. You
by
would never
foot.
get that in a car. No one.
No, no, they'd be like, "Who the hell are you?" Like,
Yeah.
tourist. But there's something about traveling someplace on a motorcycle that is very similar to like horseback, where people treat you like the weary traveler,
Yeah. I
and
like that.
it's something that's just been a really fun thing to like check off a list of these weird places, mostly in the Northeast is what I've been hitting, but
Mhm.
it's like a fun game of like, it's like a scavenger hunt for me now of trying to get my bike to these weird places.
That's cool. So even like the journey itself is it's obviously part of it.
Yeah, and I need to do a much better job at documenting it. It started out as a joke. So, me and my girlfriend, who's also another horror head,
Yeah.
and also very big horror head, big into motorcycles. We just like did it as like an outing, like a date once, and we're like, wait, this is awesome. This is like a thing. Let's just
Yeah,
keep.
I was like that person in the stories, and like when you went to the Lizzie Borden house, and they set up like a mannequin in the room, I guess like where like the murder took place,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was like, this is amazing, and I'm like, post more. I'm like that person trying to live vicariously through the post. I'm like, yeah, if you turn this into a show of some sort or document it more, I definitely eat it all up.
There's more coming, and I appreciate that. And the funny thing with that mannequin is that when we got to the Lizzie Borden house, well, first of all, we arrived on motorcycle, and that thing just like rattled the house to like, bits. And
Yeah.
the people in the house were like, oh, it was just a bizarre experience. They didn't say anything. It was also the weekend of Lizzie Borden's birthday. It was in between her birthday and the murders.
Oh wow.
And they were celebrating her birthday there with a birthday cake.
Hmm.
And it said like happy birthday, Lizzie. And like we're road weary trying to check in. They're just staring at us. We go into our room, we see this chopped to bits mannequin, and we're like, all right, well, we're pretty shot, we're pretty tired. Let's like hang out, walk around the house, and go to bed. I had to take the side of the bed looking at the chopped to bits mannequin and the murder picture. And then in the morning, we go to the gift shop and we explain that we stayed in the John Morris room. And she's like, oh, so did you move the mannequin out into the hallway? I was like, what? She goes, most people don't like to look at that all night, so they just put it in the hallway. It's like, I didn't know that was an option. I just thought it was like a museum. I didn't think I could touch the murder doll thing. I stared at it all night.
You're tiptoeing around it.
Yeah, literally like walking over it to like get to the bathroom and stuff. She's like, "Oh no, everyone moves that into the hallway. I don't know why you didn't." It's like I was trying to be respectful, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, people push the leftover French fries and the corpse into the hallway, and you're like, no, you got to honor
I
the
felt like I was in a
art
museum.
installation. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm like, this is a piece of art and history. I can't touch this stuff. And apparently it's totally okay to just get rid of it. So we were the weird ones, apparently, by sleeping next to it.
Well, if you ever find a reason to be in Toronto, which I guess it's possible because you have the LCBO, the house I'm in now, well, like I'm in the garage, this is where I kind of have my setup, but it's funny because I feel like growing up, had the same thing. Like, is my house haunted? You always wonder, like, even if I was in a new build, you're like, oh, is it on a old burial ground? Like, who
Right,
knows?
exactly.
But this house here, it was built in I think 1912, so I have an old Victorian home. The basement looks like I get an attic that's finished, which is nice, but the basement is like storage at best and
Yep.
looks like straight out of the Blair Witch, like at the end when dude's just standing in the corner. So, if you yeah, it'd be a nice house to visit. But the weird thing I always say is that like maybe because I'm just like old, tired, and like stressed, I don't get any kind of weird vibes. I feel like growing up, I had weird experiences and like odd stories at like new build homes where you would never expect it.
Yeah.
And this house here, I've been like, there's some moments where I'm like, oh, I was down in that like dungeon looking basement at 2 a.m. looking for something, and I just never had anything weird happen.
Yeah.
I'm
What do
like,
you think
someone
about this?
died at some point in this house.
What do you think about the school of thought where, people say, well, as a child, like, your energy levels are so high and you're so much more attuned to that stuff, and that's why
Yeah.
you pick up on it. I've heard a lot of people add their 2 cents on that being why kids feel that.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I never thought of it that way, but I think it definitely, like, I mean, people will sometimes then also try to say, it's the imagination, but I do think the idea of like being more in tune because, like, if I'm on the couch and I'm drinking some whiskey and watching a movie, like I put my daughter to bed, I had a long day. I'm just like, shit, I just want to relax. I'm not thinking about much, Or I hear a noise and you're just like, it's the ice machine. Like that's like
Yeah.
it could be
It's
something.
anything that will mean I don't have to get up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And as a child, I feel like there were a lot of things. Again, it'll be its own episode, but there were a lot of things that were very weird that happened. And I'm like, I know to myself, I can recall like certain events. So, like I wasn't that young. I might have been like one of them. I was like 13, and I remember something happening where I'm like, no, like that felt like 100% real. But also I was kind of a little bit more worried about those things. But
Right.
maybe it's because, like you said, I was paying attention that you picked up on it and it became something that escalated into more. But
Yeah, I think that there's something that happens when you're a kid where you're just like more attuned to it. Your imagination runs a little bit more wild, but Because at the end of the day, like whether you believe in paranormal stuff or not, it probably all boils down to energy. And we don't know where energy goes when we pass. We know that when we pass, we turn into organic material and
Yeah.
return back into the universal sound of the earth and the stars in the sky. But what happens to your soul, your energy, whatever you call it, maybe kids are more attuned to that. Who knows?
Yeah. So for yourself, like there were no weird experiences so far in terms of places you stayed?
As far as like weird experiences, maybe more so with like living people, not paranormal. Definitely the living, which you probably have to be more concerned with on any given
Yes.
anyway. But probably maybe the weirdest one so far, because honestly, a lot of these places are maybe like the coziest hotels and stuff ever. I need to catch up
Yeah.
on posting. I'm really bad at it, but there's a lot of good stuff coming for you, a lot of good
Okay,
US
good.
recommendations next time you come down here.
Yeah.
The worst one so far was we stayed in the Omni Parker House in Boston,
Hmm.
and we got into town late and took a ghost tour. And the ghost tour actually wound up spending a good portion of the tour talking about not only our hotel, but the room that we were staying in.
Oh
And
wow.
when we
You
went
guys
to
had your
check,
hands up. You're like, yeah, that's
yeah, well, they were asking, they're like, "Where are you guys staying? Where are you guys staying? Where are you guys staying?" We're like, "At the hotel we're parked in front of right now."
yeah.
But when we went to check in, Omni's a really nice hotels, usually for like businessmen and stuff,
Yeah.
which is, I always get a kick out of rolling into like fancy businessmen hotels, just reeking of gasoline, motor oil,
Yeah.
rides done for the day, maybe a little bit of whiskey on top of that. And we check in and I say, "Oh, hey, if it's not too much trouble, is this room available?" It's on the third floor. The number at the moment escapes me.
Hmm.
And they go, "So what are you guys doing here?" And we
Yeah, you
said,
probably assume you would have a show or something that you're documenting something. Yeah.
they're like, well, so what are you doing? I was like, well, we ride around on a motorcycle and we try to stay in haunted rooms, and we read this one was haunted, so we want to stay in it. It's like, all right, well, let me see if we can get you into that. Just so you know, like that is really downgrading the room, but I have to charge you the same. I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then he tried to transfer a reservation. He goes, well, we're not really supposed to rent this room out. And I need to let you know that it's not actually still the same room. That room was turned into storage because of bad PR and too many people were leaving the hotel from staying there.
Hmm.
So we turned it into a storage unit. So it's not the same room. And like his story didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, whatever. All right, we get the key, we go to the room. They never moved the room. The way the hotel was laid out, it was next to a stairwell. It was this tiny, tiny little space. It was never moved, and it was definitely the weirdest, eeriest, most physically even uncomfortable room
Yeah.
I've ever stayed in.
That's amazing. That's cool. And like I like how they try to like sway you out of it too.
They tried to sway us out of it for a hot second, and then I'm like, is this part of the theater? Is this like them? And then, but when we checked in, we could tell no one had been in that room for a
Yeah.
long, 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 long time. And all the ghost stories say that it was a long-term resident that was living there and
Okay.
would smoke cigars constantly and drink whiskey constantly, and then ultimately expired in the room as a result of his overindulgence, we'll say. And all the ghost stories say that it still reeks of cigars, it still feels awful, and that's exactly what it was like. So in 2024, it's rare that you'll be in a hotel room that reeks of tobacco,
Yeah.
but that room was like sealed and like never opened. It was bizarre.
That's cool. See, what I love about this is that like even unintentionally, everything becomes a whiskey morgue pairing because it comes full circle to the room you stayed in.
I'm
And
gonna
it,
send you this story, and I think you could do an episode, or we'll meet there and we'll do a podcast in the room. I think
yeah,
that situational interviews could be very cool.
that would be awesome. And I was gonna say, just as we begin to kind of wrap up here in terms of time, um, going to the Stanley was already on the list, but maybe I mean I don't know if you're going to ride your bike to the to the Stanley, but maybe we can organize something and maybe we can kind of get Rob out there too and
Absolutely. Rob's got
and
a bunch of motorcycles, and whenever I go out there to visit, I rent locally. Yeah, I haven't ridden my bike to Colorado just yet, but I can rent locally. Stanley's absolutely on the list. Maybe that's the next time we get together, unless you come down to the
deal.
state in the Northeast area
I
ever. We
think
go.
I think there's a better chance I'll see you before then, like because like yeah, you're not too far. I guess like an 8 hour, 9 hour drive.
Yeah, that's not terrible.
So I'll make an excuse to come out there, but then we'll plan the big trip and go to the Stanley.
Awesome. Yeah, I think Rob would love that. We'd have a great time.
All right, Dylan. So, I appreciate you doing this with me, man. Like being the first one. I'm glad it's the first one. Like this kind of encompasses everything that I wanted. like Whiskey Morgue to be, man. So I think like sometimes, like you said, the way the universe kind of pans out, having you on here, I feel like I talk to whiskey people, and as much as I want that marriage, it does happen sometimes. But you really just kind of bring all of it together. And I think like, at the end, kind of going off about your travels and whatnot and the horror side, even though it did come back to like a whiskey soaked room, I think it really does like speak to like what it's all about and about having fun and Shanky's in terms of like what the brand represents. I think that's why like yes, you work for them, and whether you mean to be or not, at least to me as a friend of yours, like you're kind of like the poster boy for like it's fun, be adventurous, it's like versatile, like no judgment. And I think it really speaks to the brand. So thank you for doing this. This is where I kind of turn it to you if there's like anything cool happening, events where we can find Shankies, where people can find out where they can buy Shankies. If you want to plug that, you can do that now.
Well, that's super cool of you, super kind of you. I really appreciate you having me on your platform. Like I said, longtime admirer of what you do. Now glad to be able to share the space now that we're friends and realize, how much we actually do have in common with this stuff and what you do to bring the worlds of horror and whiskey together. There's an audience for it. I know it's only going to continue to grow. It's been awesome to see your journey so far and what you've created. And
Thanks,
I
man.
know now doing podcast and video and YouTube and building on it, sky's the limit for you. Can't wait to see where it goes. Hope to be a part of the ride. Do this again sometime soon. Maybe in a
Yeah,
month or
episodes
so.
2, 3, and 4.
Yeah,
Just
I'm
so
I'm all here
Dylan's
for it. I'll
back.
send you your own emu so that you can have it for the set.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, Shanky's Whip, you can find it in all 50 US states. We're in a lot of chains. So if it's hard to find at your local independent, you can get it at a chain. We're up in Canada, as you know, on the LCBO. In
Mm,
the US, we ship to most states if you buy it through our website at
okay.
shankyswhip.com. You can also get, actually, for right now and for the foreseeable future, you get one of these badass pour spouts with every purchase of a 750 ml bottle, which
Yeah.
is rad. Yeah, who doesn't want a puking ostrich to
And
serve you?
trust me, like it's going to be a hit at the party. Like I'm telling you.
Awesome. Yeah, if you need more for your Halloween parties, you
Yeah.
let me know. If you could do
All right.
some big batch cocktails, it's a great season to be drinking Shankies. And we just really appreciate having some of your time and being on the platform and looking forward to seeing what you do for the rest of spooky season.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. And for those listening, I hope you enjoyed this first ever episode of the Whiskey Morgue podcast. I guess this is where you do the whole like, subscribe, leave a
Like,
review,
subscribe,
and yeah,
follow. I'm gonna pour one more shot and cheers
yeah,
to
I'll
you.
do the same. I'll try not to fill the Glen up, but
Yeah, I just went down to the nose of the jawline.
yeah.
So here's
All
cheers
right.
to episode 1.
Cheers. Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate it, brother.
All right, man. You take care. Talk soon.
Yeah.